Thank you very much, Indy. And Chair, the committee had actually asked PMRC to make its comments concerning various areas of concerns concerning the fisheries industry in Zambia. So looking at it in terms of opportunities as well as challenges. I will begin my oral submission by highlighting the adequacy of the policy and legal framework governing the fisheries industry in Zambia. So also as PMRC, we do note that the lack of the national fisheries policy entails that the industry lacks a national guide to give substance to the national fisheries vision. And it also entails that there's lack of procedures that describe the institutional arrangement for the management of fisheries in the sector. Now moving on to the legal framework. The legal framework governing fisheries in Zambia is the Fisheries Act of 2011. And this act was actually brought in place in order to repeal as well as replace the 1974 Act in order to conform with recent day fisheries management principles as well as the practices. So the Act provides an adequate legal framework that actually is governing the fisheries sector as it promotes the sustainable development of fisheries, and it also provides a precautionary approach with regards to fisheries management, conservation, utility, and development. So the Act also establishes various components. For instance, the Act also establishes the Fisheries and Aquaculture Development Fund. It also establishes fishery management areas and as well as committees. And it also provides for the regulation of commercial fishing and aquaculture. So we do note as PMRC that in as much as there's a legal framework governing fisheries in Zambia, and in as much as it is adequate, the financial resource allocation throughout the sector is still very low, and this has actually hindered the implementation of plans and programs. And we also do note to say that if we put in place the fisheries policy, it will also help to curb some of the areas of concerns that are not highlighted within the legal framework. Now moving on to the measures that have been put in place to strengthen and monitor the liberalization of markets in the fisheries sector. I must mention that there's unlimited entry into the fisheries sector, which is also clear that the sector is very liberal with regards to its market. And the 7th National Development Plan actually also acknowledges the role that the subsector plays with regards to poverty reduction, job creation, as well as the diversification of the sector. And within the first pillar of the 7th National Development Plan, and this is a pillar that aims to enhance economic diversification and job creation, the measures that have been put in place to strengthen and monitor liberalization of markets within the fisheries sector, which include increased investment in fish farming technologies, the sustainable management of captured fisheries, as well as aquaculture development. Now, when we're looking at the levels of participation of indigenous farmers in Zambia, I must mention that fish production is an important occupation in most rural areas of Zambia, with about 25,000 artisanal fishers and 30,000 other active in fish processing and trading. The fishing industry in Zambia is categorized by artisanal as well as industrial, and in these sectors we do note to say that there are either direct or indirect forms of employment that come with the sector, and it's also been estimated that there's a total of 300,000 people who actually benefit from the fishing sector in Zambia. Now, when we look at the levels of facilitation of the private sector involvement in fisheries development, we do note that over the past few years, Zambia's aquaculture sector has attracted major aquaculture companies who have invested heavily in large-scale cage fish farming. And these companies are mainly on the Copper Belt, Lusaka and Southern provinces, which are also dense populated areas. And we also have the small-scale farmers who are family-based and labor-extensive. And we do note that these farmers actually end up producing about 1 to 2 tons of fish products per year. Then other than the private sector that I've mentioned, there are a number of donors that are active in assisting the development of the fisheries sector. And these include international corporations such as the Japanese Cooperation Agency. We have the United States Agency for International Development, the Norwegian Embassy for Development, among others. Now, moving on to the strategies and mechanisms that have been put in place to prevent and control pests and diseases affecting the fisheries subsector. We do note to say that in as much as Zambia has never had a serious outbreak in aquaculture, it is clear that the country's current status regarding fish health management practices is not well prepared to handle any possible outbreaks. But the individual fish-related companies actually come into play to put on their own mechanisms that aim at reducing the effects of pest and control. And we do note that in terms of small-scale aquaculture in Zambia, they do not have well-established health management practices for their fish. And so the only way in which they might safeguard with regards to pests and diseases is that of common practices in which they use water quality management as well as farm and cultural facility disinfection. Then on the other hand, the large-scale farmers have put in place well-established biosafety measures for aquaculture production, and we do see to that impact of having them establishing food as well as with wheel baths facilities and quarantine facilities. So I'll move on to the next area of concern, which is adequacy of the market information systems in the fisheries value chain. So the fisheries subsector value chain has helped the sector to respond to the ever-increasing demand for fish. However, the market systems that have been put in place are inadequate, as they haven't been systems that have been put in place to gather, analyze, as well as disseminate information about prices and other information relevant to the fisheries sector. As PMRC, we also feel that it's therefore imperative that the Ministry of Livestock and Fisheries, through the Department of Fisheries, come with information systems that will be easily accessible to the general public, so as to provide adequate information within the sector. Then now I'll just go to the challenges that the fisheries subsector experiences in Zambia. I must mention that the multiple factors that impede the growth of the fisheries subsector, which include the following. Firstly, there's inadequate funding for and as well as reinvestment in the sector, despite the sector being able to generate its own resources. And so this is due to poor as well as uncoordinated system of collection and utilization of reserves from fish levies as well as licensing. And secondly, there have been unlimited entries into the fisheries. We do note to say that regulation within the fisheries sector is that of licensing, but also the number of licensing being issued is not limited. So this has led to the reduction in the catch per unit efforts of preferred fish species, which in turn has led to a decline in efficiency in captured fisheries. Then secondly, the dissemination of information on production techniques and processing technologies of small-scale fish farmers and fishers have been limited, and this is due to the poor evaluation of target groups and inadequate extension coverage. Another challenge that is being faced in the sector is that there's limited development in aquaculture owing to inadequate investment, with declining incomes in captured fisheries resulting from the depletion of the stock of preferred fish species and sizes. Opportunity for growth in the sector will come from increased and coordinated investment in aquaculture. And lastly, non-availability of reliable sector information, that's statistics pertaining to the sector, also limits the scope of intervention with regards to the regulation and development of the sector. Now moving on to the recommendations. As PMRC, we do believe that the following recommendations, if taken upon, would actually help to facilitate growth within the fisheries sector. First, we would like to recommend that there is need to establish an efficient as well as an effective system for collection and utilization of revenue from fish, which is through the levies as well as the licenses. Then we also feel that government should consider developing stakeholder partnerships towards sustainable and efficiently managed exploitation of fish and other valuable aquacultural resources in natural waters. We also do recommend that there's need for the identification and implementation of fishery development strategies through enhancement of both indigenous and suitable exotic species. And there's also the need for the development of aquaculture through intensified promotion of available aquaculture opportunities. And lastly, as PMRC, we would like to recommend that there's need for regular generation and provision of demand-driven information in both capture and culture fisheries. With this, shall end by submission. Thank you.
Of feeds, especially fish feeds, especially in the rural parts of our countries where we know that your comment is probably, one would say, either a nutritional or commercially related programs. When if you travel along the Mansa Bangwe-Ulututa road, I'm pretty sure if you have also traveled on the Mungu, market areas where we sell our fish, one of the major concerns that come is, we know that liberalization of the market is important. People must get their livelihoods. But when you get the social aspect of what we'd like from this particular resource, how do we reach a compromise where socially we are advancing, but also economically we are promoting this enterprise?
Do you think something is being done to ensure that we exploit these species at commercial level, as opposed to promotion of exotic tilapia species?
So with regards to the cost of feed, which is very high, and actually it's one of the factors that also which we underscored with regards to the agriculture in Zambia. There was a report that was released that looked at enabling agriculture business in Zambia, and one of them was that of failure to sustain livestock. And the whole reason that we do this is because of the high costs in terms of feed. So as an alternative measure, we can actually just try and promote local value chains where local people can actually be producing this feed with regards to various food crops such as kapenta. We can also look at soybeans, and if we can just enhance as well as empower local institutions or local companies with these capabilities to actually take upon the food processing aspect, so that we also reduce on importing. And as you know that the dollar is actually very high, so one of the reasons that has attributed to the high cost of feed is that of us importing. So if we can actually empower local producers to produce feed, it will also reduce on the aspect of the high cost of feed. And with this regards, in the economic recovery plan, one of the ways of diversifying the fisheries industry is that there will be a fisheries fund which will be put in place, which can be accessed by youths and women. So we just want to maybe just call upon government to also intensify the establishment of this fund, and also ensure that local producers of feed can also have access to this fund. Then the second question was that of that looked at the issue of us focusing on exotic instead of indigenous species. I actually feel as though putting in place of this fund that is highlighted within the economic recovery plan will also ensure that indigenous Zambians can have access to this, and also build up with regards to the capital, and they can also look at ways in which they can facilitate for indigenous development of fisheries in Zambia. And equally, I think there's also need for research and development, and I feel there's a dire need for government to put in place research and development, or facilitate research and development within the fisheries sector, just to see which indigenous species will produce at the capacity in which tilapia fisheries also do produce.
With regards to the market information system, Chair, the best approach is to develop a system similar to the main system, where you can access the price of information among market players. This will try to reduce the information asymmetries and reduce the number of transaction costs associated with the fisheries sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and thank you very much, Honorables, for the questions and concerns and input. To start with, before I pass on the microphone to my experts, who are the researchers themselves, I'd just like to comment on the issue of social impact on the fisheries sector on Zambia's socio-economic activities, particularly what it means to our people and to the layperson and the common Zambian, especially Bangalore and those areas where fishing actually happens, and it's dependent on activity. That one, we have done some work as PMRC as well on social safety nets, and this came about after a very robust survey that we undertook as a research institution ourselves. That was between 2017 getting into 2018. We were actually out there in the field. We went as far as Lupiya, went the other side where I come from in Southern Province. Went also into Eastern Province to just try and check also on water bodies and how the blue economy is actually doing. These two, we could actually share our findings to this able committee, and on how this impacts on national development, and hence also us connecting the Ministry of Fisheries to World Fish that I had alluded to earlier. And we actually became a link as a research institution, bringing together the Department of Fisheries and World Fish, and they began programs that I think have yielded so much today in trying to enhance the fisheries sector. Now, coming and also commenting a little bit on the selective, the selective approach that is being used in distributing the fishing opportunities for our people. I think on this part, I think it is allowed to have also some sort of piloting activities, knowing that this the fisheries sector has only been prioritized only in the recent past, and we haven't really clocked. Even the ministry itself has not clocked over 8 years. It has since inception, and it's thriving. And I think instead of commenting from a point of view where we're just guessing, but I'd like to believe that it is from the piloting point of view to say in this area is going to be given this much for now, and then this to see how much will be yielded and how we can move across, because as we know, the head of state has got a serious passion towards it. Regarding the feed, just like the main presenter has stated that in the report, which is the Enabling Business of Agriculture report, one of the failures that Zambia underscored was to do with how we handle livestock and aquaculture. And this was one of the 3 failures out of the 8. And in the 5, we did very well in terms of agriculture and other issues surrounding agriculture and agribusiness activities in Zambia. But having said that, it means that indeed we are lacking, and this presentation seeks to make such recommendations that will boost this sector. But having said that, the part of feeds is very important if we are to realize the entrepreneurial activities and bring them forth to its success. And we can only do that also by partnering with other international agencies that are in the country, just to make use of them. If we can just take advantage of their presence here. World Fish is in Zambia, and World Fish is actually having its headquarters in the region here in Osaka. So if we could partner, or government could partner through the Ministry of Fisheries and the Department of Fisheries, the dissemination of feed, and in a similar manner that we distribute fish, and through the e-voucher we can try and roll out something like that. I think that now, at this moment in time where we are looking into serious austerity measures, because a ministry on its own will have to come come up with officers, come up with a lot of resources. This is human resource, this is money resource, and a lot of other resources that we have to put into channel. And that is also another thing that we now have to look into, expansion of cabinet itself. So already we're looking into a lot of expansions which we should be cutting down on. And we feel that the departments can be enhanced within the ministry. Department of Fisheries can actually be enhanced to do what it has to do in order to realize its mandate of making the fisheries sector as one of the thriving economies of our country, in terms of even contributing to our GDP.